could not be happier to welcome you all to today's morning meeting. This episode brought to you by no one, but we would like a sponsor. So if you're interested in sponsoring the morning meeting, please contact us. This episode follows on last night's debate. We'll talk a little bit about what we think the implications of that are, and we'll also show you a Trump soundbite that could be the key to the entire election, and some new battleground state polling, which, if accurate, would cause the Snoopy dance to be done throughout Wilmington, Delaware. But first, today's day book. After I welcome Dan and Sean. Dan and Sean, welcome in. How's everybody doing?
Could use a couple hours more sleep. How's that?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Dan made his debut on Megyn Kelly last night. That means he was seen by over 1 million people and counting, which means Dan is starting to be recognized at his neighborhood Starbucks. More on that later. All right. On the schedule today, the vice president was supposed to be on a Pennsylvania bus trip with Tim Walz, but she had to divert. So she leaves D.C. at 2:30 Eastern or 1:05 Eastern. Not sure what she's doing this morning. Maybe dealing with the port strike in Israel. 1:05, she departs. She gets to Augusta at 2:30. A series of photo ops that will be exquisitely well advanced because the photos are everything. And then at 4 o'clock, she's doing, this is a description I don't remember ever seeing, taking my glasses off for this one. The vice president will provide updates on federal actions that are being taken to support emergency response and recovery efforts in Georgia and other states throughout the Southeast following Hurricane Helene. These remarks in Augusta, blah, blah, blah. So it sounds like she's going to talk about all the things the government's doing. We get 2 or 3 press releases about that a day. Obviously, they want to stay ahead of any notion that the federal response is insufficient. We've heard mixed things on this platform and in my reporting as to whether or not the people on the ground are indeed delighted that she's coming or not. President Biden, her former running mate, now just her boss, is going also to the region. He leaves Andrews at 12:10 and goes to Greenville, South Carolina, which is an incredibly nice place. He's doing an aerial tour of the impacted areas, and people are wondering if it's going to look a little bit too much like Bush 43. Then he leaves Greenville and goes to Raleigh. He gets an operational briefing at 4:15, again, right around the time she's doing her thing, which is an interesting choice. And then he comes back. All right. Donald Trump, as far as I know, has got nothing on his public schedule today. I wouldn't be surprised if he does something as he sits around reading all the great reviews of his running mate's debate performance. Tim Walz is on that bus trip through Pennsylvania, the critical state in this election, which she was supposed to go on, substituting for Vice President Harris, her doppelganger, Senator Fetterman. 2 o'clock, rise in Harrisburg. Bus makes stops all over the place. There'll be a lot of what they call OTRs. I suspect sweets will be eaten because that guy has a huge sweet tooth. York at 3 p.m. With Fetterman, 4:30. A political engagement, don't know what that is, in York County, but the campaign has not released where. Some combination of not wanting reporters to be able to ask questions and security concerns. It's crazy how little information they give out to the public and sometimes the press about events. And then finally, the final stop of the day, if it's 6 p.m., it's Reading, PA, where Governor Walz will meet with local Latino leaders. That's some terrific alliteration. All right, next, J.D. Vance, fresh off what some consider to be a decent performance, but not everyone, is got 2 events in the state of Michigan. 1:30 in Auburn Hills, where the Pistons, I don't know, they still play in Auburn Hills? They used to. I don't know if they still do. Then 5:30 in Marne, Michigan. Maybe it's Marne. I don't know where that is. I probably should have Google mapped it. So he's got 2 events there. And I will say, to kick us off, to talk about the debate, I think the implications are mostly for Vance. I think he'll get bigger crowds. I think he'll raise more money. And I think maybe, and Sean will probably scoff at this, I think he might get good press coverage because it's going to be harder to give him worse press coverage. And I think he helped himself with the press. So many hands up already. I'll say again before I turn it over to Sean to ask him what he thinks the implications of the debate are. If you want to get in the conversation, please raise your hand. As always, people like Nick Mueller, who's new and never asked a question before, please join us. We'd love to get new folks involved in the conversation. And we'll go to you after my lengthy filibuster concludes. And I turn to Sean Spicer, star of Screen and Stage, to say, Sean, What do you think the implications of the debate are?
Well, first, just a clarification, Marnay, west of Grand Rapids, just a little
Yep.
north of
Thank
Kalamazoo
you.
on
Thank you
96.
for doing that. And is
Yeah,
that pronouncer
definitely.
correct? Is it Marne?
I don't know. I just know how to use Google Maps.
Okay.
So let's look. I think the debate was great for JD. It was an opportunity for people who had heard but not seen him, and conversely, also about Walz. It put a lot of people at rest. I heard a lot from women who had texted me that had initial concerns, mostly because of what they had read about him, who said, "Wow, I actually really like this guy. I'm impressed by him." I don't think it'll move the needle particularly a lot, but I think it calmed a lot of fears of people who might have had some concerns. It gave them another reason or comfort in voting for Trump if they were on the fence. It took
Yep.
away a reason for those people who are Kamala curious, hoping that last night might have pushed him over the top. I've never heard any Republican answer a question as well as he did on the issue of abortion. He put Tim Walz, the first Democrat in history to be on defense on the issue of abortion. He put people at ease with his bio, his response. He did a great job of reconnecting the focus back to Kamala Harris. Frankly, stuff that Trump didn't do in the debate. He was constantly reminding people she's been in office for 3.5 years, and then here's the record and results of the Trump administration. So net, I think it was a good night for Trump. It actually just blunted the momentum, I think, of a lot of good nights and a lot of good media days for Harris. So I agree with you. I think you're going to see him out there more. They're going to push him out there for more interviews. He'll probably sign even more texts and fundraising appeals. But this was a good 24 hours for the Trump campaign.
Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a good night for Vance, a good night for the Trump campaign. I think the good news for Democrats is, Trump is likely in the next, day, week, even few hours to remind people of Trump. And this race will shift back to, the two names at the top of the ticket. And I think, I feel pretty confident that Trump will do that here, imminently.
Yep.
And we'll move on.
Yes. I'll say two more things, and then I want to move on to the storm and the dock worker strike in the Middle East. One is, we're not going to talk about the liberal media bias, but it was disgusting, and I just can't believe what they did. But we're not going to dwell on it. Maybe I'll talk more about that at 10:30. The other thing is, if Harris loses, it will be because she never laid out a theory of the case about how she'd be a good steward of a good economy. And last night, the dog that didn't bark is Walz did none of that. Even if you want to build up his performance, Rachel Maddow and Dan Pfeiffer said he won the debate. They're living in a parallel universe where Joe Klein and I don't reside. But he didn't really, there's nothing, no one would watch that and say, oh, now I get the Harris Walz theory of the case on the economy. And if you believe, as many people in Trump world do, and I do, and some people in her campaign do, that mission one remains, what do you know about her ability to be a good steward of a good economy? They missed it. There was nothing memorable or really almost anything said about that.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, look, in fairness to Walz, though, he's playing the hand that he was dealt from the Harris campaign. And it goes back to that, speech she gave in Pittsburgh where she really put no additional meat on the bone. So, yeah. I mean, in fairness to Walz, he wasn't going to make up new policy.
But he didn't even try. He didn't even say she's got these great policies. If you're for the middle class, we're there for you in some memorable way.
I mean, he did. He said
not in some memorable way. Not in a memorable.
Well, I mean, that's a different story. The policies themselves are small, but.
Dan's right. I mean, look, the guy only can play the cards that he was handed. She can't play the cards. She literally won't give an answer to why she's flip-flopped on these issues, why her values, quote unquote, haven't changed. And I will say this, the answer on you go back through debate history, there's always that line, calling yourself a knucklehead. I just, the Tiananmen Square answer was so bad. I cannot believe
it's the worst answer maybe ever.
I mean, honestly,
Sean, my wife has a great expression when things are bad. If you have to eat shit, don't nibble. I've never seen somebody nibble longer in my life than.
But do we think he just blanked on what he was supposed to say, or do we think,
no.
as I read one, they didn't prepare?
Can I just say
it?
this though? This is what blows my mind about this. You are not like, you don't confuse being in Tiananmen Square with being at the Target outside Edina, Minnesota.
I understand, but did they prepare or not? Raise your hand. Show of hands, you two. Did they prepare? No,
I mean, look, that
he was
he has
winging
given
it.
he has given a similar answer on other questionable things,
He has.
which is
Yeah.
which is stunning because to your
Yeah.
point, Mark, if that's what he prepared and answered with, it does make you
Yeah.
question the
Yeah.
validity of this.
I mean,
Yeah.
so the funny part is having been in debate prep, you're right. You war game and you go back and forth on how you're going to answer and pivot. And the idea that he said, "Hey, what if I just say I'm a knucklehead?" Like, I don't think there's a
That's
political
it.
strategy.
You know, the dog, the other dog that's not barking is there are a bunch of activist Democrats on in the States and in Washington who normally are on Twitter, you know, all the time, who were silent because they just want to move on. All right, Sean, I'm going to go to you first again, just because you've worked in a White House recently. If you're the Harris campaign and the OVP, how are you operating with the West Wing to make sure that any developments in the Middle East and the dock workers strike and the storm aftermath don't bounce back on her in a negative way? Like, how that coordination, is that round the clock, or there? How do you make sure? How do you minimize the chances, I should say, that any of those three things could cost her a news cycle or more than that?
Yeah, it's a great question because the way it works is the VP is not normally in the. I mean, so the answer to your question is this: if Joe Biden, and I believe he probably has made it very clear to his team, she needs to be in the loop on every decision and every brief.
Yes.
But
Yes.
this is up to them to decide because that's not the natural flow of information. And so everything that I've seen and believe is that the Biden team has gone, to the extremes to make sure she's in the loop. But this is critical for her staff. It's a two-way street. They've got to hope that the White House team is going in her direction, and then she's got to be standing outside the door saying, "Hey, any updates? Any updates? Any update?" Right? They've got to be aggressive in making sure that they're in the meetings, that they're finding out, "Hey, what's next? What should I?" So she's got to hope that her staff is on their game, and that the Biden team, which I believe, at least from what you can see, is doing everything they can to make sure she's looped in. So I would just say I don't know as much about her team at the top, but she's got to make sure her staff is saying, do not let there be a meeting or a briefing that I'm not involved in or part of.
Dan, one big advantage she has is her two current chiefs of staff, one at the OVP and one at the campaign, are two really nice, really experienced, really competent people who are friendly with each other. Like, there's no big friction. And those two have, as John suggested, they've got walk in now on everything. Her equities are front and center. So I want you to comment on that and how important having two great chiefs of staff are in this situation. And also, of the three, which one do you think is currently holds the most political peril for her, and why?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, Lorraine Balls, not only is she just an excellent manager, but she comes out of the communications world. So she gets the optics and the need to be seen. So I think, look, this is where they have to effectively tag team this, right? I mean, Biden is the president, and to Sean's point, she wants to be looped in. You want to be seen as cool, calm, and in command. But also, let him handle, some of the bad news when necessary. And I think, look, of all the crises, the one in the Middle East, I think, holds the most peril. It just has the potential to tear the party apart at a time when you need it unified and in specific swing states specifically. And so that is the one that I keep watching the most closely.
All right, let's do one topic real quick, and then I want to do one last topic and then go to everybody's questions. So again, please raise your hand if you'd like to get in. So last night, Donald Trump on Truth, either during or right after the debate, said finally he would veto a national abortion ban. This is step 17 in moderating, right? So Sean, or Dan first, is he done? Do you think this is the final resting position, or is there more to do to move to the left of the center on abortion rights?
Oh, look, he twists himself in a pretzel. The problem is every time he makes a statement like that, the evangelical right freaks out, and then he has to kind of run back and reassure them. And so he just kind of runs in circles. It is the one issue where Democrats have a clear advantage, where Trump cannot say, look at what I did in the past, and don't you want to go back to that? He doesn't really have a coherent position going forward. And I think Democrats are just going to keep pressing and pressing as hard as they can on this issue.
Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I think that he's got more of a danger right now of alienating the folks on the right. I mean, we are a pro-life party. Um, and it's an unnecessary issue. Like you've settled it, you've talked about the states. He just needs to reiterate it, and he's causing himself problems probably more on the right than anything else right now. So if I were, advising him, I think he just needs to stop and let JD's performance last night stand.
All right, two last quick things, and we're gonna go to your questions. So last or yesterday, Donald Trump did two events in Wisconsin. Both the Washington Post and the New York Times did atypical versions of Trump has lost his mind. The weave is broken. He talks about too many nuts of things. He's either tired or crazy or mentally deficient. And they've written that story a million times. But these were a little more well illustrated, I thought. So I'll show you one soundbite, 102, please, of Trump confusing two world leaders.
Washington would not get us. They said that we have to guard the United Nations, which meant the president of North Korea, who's basically trying to kill me. So they want to guard him, but they don't want to guard me. So we're going to start having it out with them because we've sort of have it.
You're both honest brokers and students of mental decline. Dan, does that man, and that's just one example, you can go read the Washington Post and New York Times. Do you have any indication that the George Conway School of Medical Research that says Donald Trump's severely mental declined, do you have any sense that that's true?
Look, no. I mean, he's always been a word salad machine going back to 2015. But look, all's fair in love and war. I mean, Republicans did this very effectively to Joe Biden going back to 2019. And I think if Trump were to have a more direct senior moment in the last 30 days, it could raise it. I mean, it's kind of like Hillary Clinton fainting on 9/11.
What more senior would you like to see besides rush to the hospital? I mean,
if he has a brain, I mean, it's kind of like Joe Biden, where you in the debate where you kind of have that brain freeze. You can't.
No, but if Joe Biden before Nancy Pelosi offed him, if Joe Biden had said the leader of North Korea when he meant the leader of Iran, people would have noted that.
But Donald Trump has been doing that forever. I mean, he's never been the smoothest speaker. He's conflated world leaders.
He makes up Nancy Pelosi and Nikki Haley
all the time.
I don't really. Just to be clear, I don't really believe this premise, but I know people wanted me to raise it, so I did. Sean, your former boss, he's out of his mind, isn't he?
Yeah. Look, I think it's another issue where Dan and I agree. We should shake hands after the. I feel like we're Tim Waltz and JD. I'll play the role of JD. But look, there's a big difference too. I mean, again, this is one-off stuff. The narrative, I mentioned this several meetings ago. Narratives sink in, right? So it's people in DC. They're prolific fundraisers. They're policy wonk. No one's everything with Trump is built in right now, right? So you either like him, you don't. You think he's nuts, you don't. But I think it's too late in a campaign to try to have a new narrative sink in, and that's not one of them right now.
The only thing I'll disagree with you about, Sean, is
we were on a roll, brother. We were on a roll.
Yeah. There's a lot of research that, people just inherently think somebody 78 is old. So it would not take too much if Trump were to have some moment, and don't ask me to define what that is, it could surface, and you're only talking 5% of, the voters sitting there outstanding, to potentially have people say he is too old. So I would keep hammering it, even though it's a little ridiculous right now.
I just don't look. The one thing, like I've said this before, people want Donald Trump to be less active. He doesn't have an issue with people not thinking that he's, energetic and he's vibrant. So this is not an issue that if I were the Trump campaign, I wouldn't. This is not something I would give 2 seconds of thought to.
All right, Nick, welcome in. Nick is a longtime viewer, first-time participant, so we're super psyched about that.
That's
Nick,
right.
Where are you? Who are you supporting?
I'm in the mountains in Colorado, about an hour west of Denver. I was going to vote for Bobby, so as of now, probably just we'll leave that question blank.
Leave that blank. Who have you voted for president in the olden days?
Man, back in, I guess.
Did you vote for Clinton or Trump? Clinton or Trump in 2016?
No, I think I
Trump,
voted
Trump or
Gary
Biden?
Johnson
Trump,
back
Trump or
then.
Biden? Trump or Biden in 20?
No,
Yeah.
no, I've
So
been a third party guy.
you're Mr. Outsider. Nick, I want you to help us. I want you to make you the fourth host here. Audra, could you put up 101, please? Nick, these are some poll results from, you ever heard of the Cook Political Report with Amy Walter? You ever heard of that thing?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so they got some polls out today, Battleground State polls, that do not match directionally with most of the current recent data, public or private. Can you read those, Nick, or is that too small for you?
No, I can
All
see.
right, so read them off, Nick. Read them off. Arizona, what do you got? Harris.
We got Harris +3.
Yeah. Keep going. Just run them through.
Georgia, we have Trump +1. Michigan, Harris +3. Nevada, Harris +1. North Carolina, Harris +3. Pennsylvania, Harris +2. Wisconsin, Harris +2.
So, Nick, my question is, should we just make the rest of the program about picking the Harris cabinet, or would you be skeptical of these numbers?
I don't think I'd be skeptical necessarily. No.
Okay. All right. Then let's pick the Harris cabinet. All right. I just closing the button on these polls. They don't match with other data. I don't think the Harris campaign would tell you these numbers are correct. I haven't had time to dig into the methodology, but there it is. All right, Nick.
Mark, just real quick. Do you actually think I think they might be excited about them? They don't jive with most. I mean, again, we're still within the margin of error, but I don't even think that the Harris campaign would tell you that those are.
They would not. They would not.
I mean, it's margin of error, right? Like
Nick,
these things are going to bounce around.
I'm going to ask you one more question, Nick, and then the floor is yours to ask or say. Who do you think is going to win the election and why?
I mean, if I had to like put money on it right now, I'd put it on Harris.
On Harris. How come? Because those Cook Political Report polls or something?
No. I just think, I mean, granted, I think Trump does have the advantage in the Electoral College. I just think in a close race, it'll tilt Harris.
Okay. Nick, what's on your mind? Question or comment?
Yeah, my question, I guess, would be related to the debate. Like if you just watch that debate with the sound off, I think it was very obvious JD won just from body language, right? He was poised. He had that smirk at the camera like he's Jim from The Office. And Walz just kind of looked like he's bouncing all over the place, mouth open at weird times, looked confused. And so I'm curious as to how much time is spent training these guys on body language and recognizing that there's a camera on them at all times during debate prep.
In a real campaign, tons. Donald, the Trump campaign is a little loosey-goosey, but yeah, they're aware of that, and they're supposed to work closely with the network to get a sense of how many cameras are in the room, what shots are they likely to take. The 2-shot has become kind of standard, and so everybody knows to prepare for that, although they don't always do it well. And the internet and social are filled with screen grabs of Walt looking less than reassuring. Maybe I'll say it like that. But yeah, they work on it a ton, and they know that a lot of people watch with the sound off or aren't listening or watch it on social, whatever. But not everybody executes that, and of course, Joe Biden, that was a big part of why people thought he did so badly.
Yeah, exactly.
Nick, come back regularly with your independent Western streak. Appreciate it. All right.
Mark, real quick, I want 2 things. One, Nick, kudos for the shout out, Jim, on The Office. I was trying to put my finger on something, and I think you just did. But secondly, I think your question is excellent. It is something that when people don't appreciate sometimes the time, and maybe it's just because I'm a comms guy, how much an image matters, right? And there's a couple this morning of Waltz going in for the handshake, and he's got one hand in, the other one grabbing Waltz's left shoulder. It's just, there are powerful things. Dan commented earlier, and a lot of the visual matters. And I frankly, I'm glad you asked, because I don't think sometimes people fully appreciate it when they're doing the prep, and not just in the political world, but in the corporate world and all that kind of stuff. And so it's a great question. Mark's right. I actually think it's interesting how little time Trump Vance put into it this time. You hear about a lot of these Zoom preps. But anyway, great question.
Yep. Sherilyn, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, Sherilyn.
Sherilyn.
Yes.
Sherilyn, are the hat and top bought together, or you did that your own?
I did it myself.
All right. Looks fantastic.
Thank you.
Tell everybody who doesn't know where you are, who you're supporting for president, and what's on your mind, please.
Okay. I'm in the great state of Texas. And of course, I am for Trump.
Okay. And have you been for
100%.
Trump? Were you for Trump in 16 and 20 also?
Yes, I was.
Yeah. So you're going to get to vote for him 3 times minimum.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and how'd you find two-way in the morning meeting?
My husband actually,
Yeah.
he said, yes, absolutely. And I enjoyed you before when you had your show on Showtime.
Thank you. Appreciate that. What's on your mind? Question or comment? And again, we appreciate you being here.
So my question is, with 74% of people believing in a God or a higher power, Kamala hasn't actually, or excuse me, it's Kamala hasn't actually came out and said what her belief system is. I'm just curious as to what she actually believes in.
You mean regarding faith?
Correct.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice. She's never talked much about it as a public figure. She talks less about it, may talk less about it than any major party nominee, at least in a while. John Kerry didn't talk much about it. Do you think Donald Trump talks about his faith sufficiently for your desires?
Yes.
He does.
Yes.
I'm wondering if you guys could, while we're talking here, pull up that great Donald Trump soundbite when he was asked if what his favorite Bible verse was. I think we should share that. If you guys pull that in time, let me know.
Do not have that, I'm afraid.
All right. So your question is why doesn't she do it more, or what has she said? What's your actual?
Yeah. Why, if she believes in something, why doesn't she talk about it?
Yeah. You know, I wish I had an article, because I'm sure someone's written one, but I've seen references to it. Dan, what do you think about that? What do you know about her faith, or what she said about it?
So, I mean, I think this is one of those classic things. If this was a normal campaign and she had, 18 months and ran in a primary and a general, I think this would come up. She would talk about it. There would be a time and a place to address it. I just think it is such a short sprint. To Mark's point, Donald Trump is not, does not talk about his own faith very often. And there are other issues that seem to be front and center on the minds of voters. So I don't think.
Don't you think if she would take some interviews, maybe that question would come up?
Yeah,
I think a lot of questions would come up and would recommend she does interviews, but here we are.
Yes,
to state the obvious, we do hear a lot about her husband's faith. That's discussed quite a bit. Sean, anything you want to say about this?
Yeah, I would just say this. I first of all, I've given Kamala, I think they've done a really good job of navigating race and gender as well. So I think this kind of fits in the box. On a personal level, and this is one where, again, let's just separate the personal from the politics. On a personal level, I've always believed that someone's relationship with God is between them and the Lord, and how they want to articulate that and that relationship and how it evolves is something that I've never wanted to question. I find it, frankly, somewhat demeaning and insulting when people talk about what someone believes or not, and particularly, and in Trump's case, I hope I've seen he's posted the prayer to St. Michael recently. He posted an image of the Blessed Mother and wished her a happy birthday. I hope that the events that he was saved by with these shootings brought him closer to God. I hope that that's something that is. Anyway, I won't go down that, but I do think that it's an interesting question. This is the first modern history race in modern history where neither candidate has really talked about their faith and a relationship to God and what they believe in. I do find it interesting. That being said, I go back to what I said earlier. To some extent, you have a right to keep that relationship between you and God. But I am intrigued by it from a tactical standpoint, right? From a political. Real quick, one last thing. Where do you live in Texas, and how do you see the Senate race playing out?
And who are you voting for in the Senate race?
Well, I usually vote the ticket.
Yeah.
So.
But will you be making exception for Ted Cruz?
Absolutely, I'll vote for Ted Cruz.
Okay. Yeah. And where do you live? Where do you live in Texas?
I live in what they call the Platinum Corridor in the Plano, Frisco area, where a lot of corporations have moved here. So it's a lot of, Pepsi is here, Snap and Dr. Pepper is here.
You know what I call the Platinum Corridor? In the Turtle Creek Mall where the Tiffany's is.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. We got to show this to you because you may never have seen this clip, but this is Donald Trump's greatest moment discussing his personal faith. Please play.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay.
Explain it. You mentioned the Bible. You've been talking about how it's your favorite book. And you said, I think last night in Iowa, some people are surprised that you say that. I'm wondering what one or two of your most favored Bible verses are and why.
I wouldn't want to get into it because to me that's very personal. You know, when I talk about the Bible, it's very personal. So I don't want to get into verses. I don't want to get into.
There's no verse that means a lot to you that you think about or cite.
The Bible means a lot to me, but I don't want to get into specifics.
Even to cite a verse that you like.
No, I don't want to do that.
You're an Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy?
Probably equal. I think it's just an incredible. The whole Bible is an incredible. I joke very much so. They always hold up the Art of the Deal. I say my second favorite book of all time.
Charlene, what do you think of that? What's your critique of your candidate's replies?
Well, I mean, he
right.
didn't answer the question.
I don't want to put you on the spot. Do you have a favorite Bible verse?
Yeah, you just put me on the spot because I do.
No, that's all right.
I do. I really do.
Yeah.
But,
okay.
You know, and I can agree with Sean. You know, I do believe that it is something between you and who you believe in.
Yeah.
But my thing is, I guess it goes back to how she looks at abortion and how the two would align.
Yeah.
Okay. Her faith and abortion.
Yeah.
So
thank you for joining us and for introducing the topic. And we hope you'll come back regularly. And your husband got you to watch. Please bring at least one other person to our family.
Okay.
We're very grateful to you. Thank you. Enjoyed it. Warning our affiliates, we are going to run a little bit over because we got some more great people to hear from. Alexander, welcome in. Please tell people who don't know where you are, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind.
Good morning. Sorry, I can't see myself, so I'm a little talking at a black screen.
That's all right. All right. We see you look fun. You're well framed.
All right, cool.
Got a cool picture behind you. Can't tell what it is, but it looks cool.
Oh, it's John Michelle Basquiat. But first of all, morning, Dan. I'm a neighbor up here in the Upper West Side, Manhattan. My thoughts on last night, I think it really.
Alexander, who are you supporting for president?
Ooh, that's right now I'm Trump. I took a breath because I'm in Manhattan. I don't want anybody to hear me say that.
That's all right. Just don't hold up any piece of mail or anything. Did you vote for Trump in 16 or 20?
I did.
Yeah. Okay.
And full disclosure, I used to work White House Situation Room for Obama Biden. And I also was on the comms team for General Lloyd Austin when he was our U.S. Commanding General of Iraq.
What made you, with that pedigree, what made you a Trump man?
Well, those jobs, they were never political. They were public service. The thing I liked about working in government when I was there was we honestly didn't talk politics that much. It just really wasn't, we did our job. So when I was in the Situation Room, I was there 2012 through 2015. If Romney had won, my job wouldn't have changed. Preparing the president's intelligence brief would have still been my priority.
Yes, sir.
So
that's awesome.
So for me, it's never been really about the parties. It's been about who can best present their ideas, who can communicate better. I think last night, I think it really showed that Vance has been doing interviews. He's been challenged a lot since he's been announced. And so he's used to being in that combative space. I think Waltz, he's been used to sitting half a step behind Harris, trying to not outshine her, you know, kind of be agreeable and very likable. But that's not a good side-by-side on a national stage where I counted at least 25 times. He was like, I agree with him. I agree. We agree. You know, you just can't do that when you're trying to actually beat somebody in a debate. And so I think it really showed the strategies that the campaigns have taken from a communication standpoint and preparation of their candidates.
Yes, sir.
You know,
go ahead. Well, if all the votes are counted, not just the votes at Zabar's, who do you think is going to win the election and why?
I'm gonna say the same thing I said in 2016. I think Trump is gonna win, and I was kind of at the time I was actually attending school on Columbia University campus, and you would have thought it was 9/11 there when they announced it, that Trump won. It was crazy. But for me, it was not an emotional reaction. I've never had an emotional reaction to an election. I look at it as, we live in a functioning republic with democratic policies. I believe in government. I believe in the strength of our government. I don't believe hypes around, this is a risk to our democracy and, we're going to topple like Rome. I don't believe that. I've been in those rooms. I've been with those people. There's so much more that goes on behind the scenes that the everyday citizen doesn't see. And I think it's irresponsible that we put those messages out so much. But,
Alexander, I bet you Sean and Dan both want to ask you a question. So I want to let them do that. But I want to ask you one and then give you a chance if you have a question. What do you, what kind of business are you in here in Manhattan now? If you're open to saying.
Now I work in corporate affairs in the energy industry, strategic communications.
And is the energy industry and Trump's position versus Harris, does that inform your support for Trump at all?
No. My job is my job. I will take a note that I sent my boss a message as soon as the debate was over. It was like energy was a big topic tonight. And so that will shape, how we talk about it at our job for the next, couple of months or so. But no, my girlfriend asked me this morning, how could I vote for a Republican if I worked? Oh, I also was on the Bloomberg campaign. So they say, how can I work in democratic spaces and still vote Republican? For me, a job is a job. When you go there, you don't take your personal feelings to your job. What I do, I serve whoever I'm working with. I want them to win. If I was on Harris's team right now, I'd want her to destroy Trump. But
Alexander, the more you talk, the more questions I have, but I need to bite my tongue. Dan, question for Alexander. If you'd like, you can pass, but if you got one, please ask.
No question. I was just going to compliment him on.
I just real quick, Alexander. First, thank you for your service and everything you've done for the country. I appreciate that and your words, because I think it's important in these days to remember that sometimes we can actually go do a job, do it well, and leave our politics aside. So thank you for your service and for your comments. When you go out and talk, you're in New York, you've got a lot of, I think the circles that you're running in between your girlfriend and some of the things that you've said, are there other people that might not have voted for Trump the last couple cycles like you that are open to the argument, or are you sort of a unicorn among your friends and family?
Don't tell her this, even though she's probably gonna see it. I think my girlfriend's gonna vote Trump. And we talked about it last night. I stopped right at the end of the debate and said, if you weren't looking at this in the way in which I look at these things, where you just take it and you just look at the facts of things, not the feelings and all this kind of stuff, look at the facts, would you even be considering voting Trump? And she 100% would have never, because her circle is not that here in New York. And a lot of the people that I talk to, I have empathy for a lot of people that I speak to in New York. First of all, I'm from rural East Texas. That's where I grew up. So I bring that background as well. Being a veteran, bring that background. These are all things that are polar opposite of Manhattan, New York. And I feel sorry sometimes. I feel empathetic sometimes, because when I pose certain questions to my friends here in New York, I can see their face drop. I can see the hurt and the doubt in what they've been believing for a period of time. And I don't villainize anybody for their choice, just like I don't want to be villainized for my choice. But that's what I feel is happening. I think a lot of people's eyes are starting to get open because of the poor communication of the Democratic Party as a whole. They're not effective communicators. They are not effective at knowing how to win. So actually, they talk coalition, they talk coming together. And I could say we, because I've been on them teams and I've sat in some of those rooms and said, we don't know how to win. You know, we always got to slice out a little piece of every single topic and say, oh, well, we believe in this, but oh, wait, but we need to add in this group and we need to add this group and we need to make sure we cover this. It's like Republicans are a lot better at coalescing around one idea and kind of going with that. Whether there's parts of it that are a little fuzzy on the outside and aren't agreeable to the major public, they don't care. They're thinking about winning, and which I think that's where the Democratic Party needs to get, you know. And I guess me giving advice to the Democratic Party, I just want, what I liked about last night, I'll say this, I liked that I could watch it and it was a debate. I like a good fight. I like going back. It was civil.
Yeah. Alexander, you haven't been able to read the chat while you've been talking unless you're a brilliant multitasker. I think basically that by popular demand, folks would like you to have your own show on two-way. So clear that with your boss if you can, number one. Number two, we haven't even talked about your time in Iraq, which someone just emailed me and said you served in Iraq. And Sean already thanked you for your service, but that's above and beyond. I haven't asked you to show us.
I'm really worried. I'm really worried that people I have worked with before can see
are going to see you.
Me. And I think some of them might be disappointed. But they know me. Everybody who's worked with me knows me. And I'll say to you, like I said to Dan, I'm in the neighborhood, so we can all grab coffee. I'm on 80,
what's your best
86.
What's 86? What's your best piece of Bloomberg swag from the campaign?
Oh, you know what? Actually I kept some pins that were, I think it said it had something to do with women's reproductive rights, but I thought from a design standpoint, it was one of the best pins that I'd ever seen. And so I kept. They
had incredible stuff. When we go to dinner, me, you, and Dan, John Podhoretz is going to come too because he's a fan already. Yeah. Alexander, stand by for 1 second. Shannon, Shannon, raise your physical hand if you're a Harris supporter. Are you a Harris supporter? Yes? No, you're not. All right. I'm trying to get a Harris supporter on here because we've just by the luck of the draw had all Trump supporters and we're already so far over. We might as well run into the next show. If you've got your hand up, Tom, are you a Harris supporter? Tom, raise your hand. No. Mark Kramer, Justin, are you a Harris supporter? It's ruining the way I promote this program that we got people from across the board. Anybody who's on here who's a Harris supporter who would like to speak? Oh my goodness. Ladies and gentlemen, the man who always helps us out when we need a Harris supporter, Mr. Chris Simmons. Chris,
and his Harvard t-shirt.
Chris, first of all, are you excited about Kamala Harris coming to Georgia today?
No, not particularly.
No? All right. Chris, welcome. Would you like to ask Alexander a question? You don't have to, but offer you the opportunity.
Oh, yeah. I'd love to ask him a bunch of questions. Here's one.
All right. Yeah.
What percentage of his Black friends does he think agree with his point of view?
Oh, this is a good one. First of all, Chris, I like you, man. I've been watching you for weeks here. Just as a person, I like you. I'm from
Chris,
the South.
Just to be clear, Chris, just to be clear, Alexander, sorry to interrupt. I want to go back talking to Chris. You are the it participant today, but let's pay homage to the longtime dominant figure, Chris Simmons. But I like the fact that you've been watching him and you appreciate him, even though you're voting for different people. That's right in the ethos of this platform. I apologize for interrupting. Alexander, you go. Tell Chris how awesome he is, whatever you want to do. And respond to his question, please. I'll
respond to his question. I'll respond to his question first. One, I also throw in the fact that I'm a major in African American diaspora studies from Columbia University. And so being Black and understanding the Black experience is something it's who I am, you know? And so in the same way that someone mentioned faith earlier, I don't talk about my faith all the time, but my dad's a pastor. of the second oldest African American church in Texas. So I have a, being African American, being Black is core to who I am. And I would say a lot of my Black friends at my age, which I'm 37, and the majority of my Black friends in New York are actually younger than me. For once, I'm the old person in the room, opposite to my career previously. I think that they are starting to lean a lot more Trump, which is surprising in New York. I mean, they initially start with the Trump's crazy. Trump's, he's wild, but as you can see, you get in a conversation with me, we're gonna have a conversation. Like I'm just gonna, talk about it. And I'm not a Trump fanboy. So like I think JD Vance did a tremendous service to Trump last night, because if you're worried about the top of the ticket, you got to make sure that the bottom of the ticket is solid. And so he kind of balanced that, which to go all the way back, if we were worried about Biden, we should just swapped out the VP, which was thrown out there at the beginning, but that's neither here nor there. I would say, and I just recently saw someone who actually is advising the Harris campaign, who's an older African American man, probably looks like he's probably in your age group, and his position on what he thinks the Black community is saying is so out of touch. It's so out of touch. It's a generational. There's a generational shift that has taken place that I think the older African American community doesn't see. They don't, and it's not because they don't want to see it. They just don't. There aren't many people like me who bridge that gap, who can talk to someone who's older and also talk to someone who's younger. I'm sitting the other night having drinks with friends. A friend of mine who's known me for 2 years thought I was 25. I'm 37. And it just never came up in our age. But then I sit with an older person like yourself, and there's a certain type of deference that I take. But I also, I have to say in a polite way, that it's just out of touch. The older African American.
Sean, I have a follow on.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So 4 years ago, Trump only got 2% of the Black female, no, maybe 5% of the Black female vote nationally. And I think about 10 to 12% of the Black male vote. So my question to you is, what do you think has happened in the last 4 years? That's going to make such a significant shift. Okay.
I get it, because I'll tell you now, I'm a one issue voter. I live in Manhattan, and as crazy as it sounds, I want to own something. Like, that is my goal. I want to own something. I come from Texas, where the idea that, like, you grow up, you get married, or you don't get married, you buy a house. Met my girlfriend here, who was born and raised in New York, Puerto Rican. She never thought about the concept of ownership. Renting is just the mindset in New York. If you're not, of a certain social status or a certain financial, socioeconomic background. And I think a lot of African American men, and I'm speaking to African American men here, I think we do that in our society so much that we focus on what African American women are doing instead of talking about the Black vote as a whole. And because we forget a lot of times, those African American women, those Black women, are a lot of times in partnerships with their men who, speaking big picture, in the same way that we have the flyover states and we don't think about middle America, sometimes we don't think about Black men. We don't. Only time we talk about them is when we talk about incarceration rates and we talk about, poor depictions of them in media, etc. But now we have to talk to them because, they have some value because their votes could go a certain way. And I mean, brother to brother, I'm just going to say, we like that. We liked it. Oh, now you see me. Now I have a little bit of value. So I'm going to try to expend some of that capital. capital. I'm gonna try to get something out of you. Like this is the first time you're looking at me, because you've been hyping my woman for so long. Now you're looking at me. There's a little bit of like, okay, I mean something. I have value, and I think whether or not, and I'll say this about Trump, whether or not Trump succeeds in doing anything for Black people or Black men in particular, the fact that he presents the idea that I see you first, he goes to him first and says, I see you. Oh yeah. Somebody said, and I forget who it was, I'm sorry. I heard some commentator say, or it might have been on this show yesterday or something. Trump has this ability that when he's in the room with somebody, he makes that person feel like they are the most important person at that moment. When you get certain interviews with Trump, you see how he does. When you see him talk to these streamers, I don't watch streamers. Like that's not my thing. But when I see how he sits with those people and says,
Hey,
"Hey,
Alexander,
you're the
can I
man."
point something out to you?
Yeah.
Can I point something out to you?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
you just said you said you want to own something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kamala says she's going to give first-time home buyers a big tax incentive.
Okay, so
What's Trump
you know
going to
what
do for you?
happens there? Home builders raise the price of their initial offering on the house by $25,000. Woo. Okay, that's an easy fix for the housing industry. They just raise it 25. It's gonna go up anyway with inflation. Like that's not doing anything for me.
Chris Simmons can stand a double team. Here's Trump supporter Shannon Swift. Shannon, where do you live?
Well, I'm in between Yonkers and Riverdale, but right now I'm in Williamsburg, in Brooklyn.
Yeah, and did you vote for Trump in either 16 or 20 or both?
No, I was a national delegate for Bernie Sanders. I helped many people. I was in many states. I was doing a lot of work for Bernie.
All right, so Sanders in 16 or Sanders in 20?
Both. Yes, but then I voted for Biden. Excuse me, I voted for Clinton and then Biden.
Yeah, and now you're voting for Trump?
Yes, I've been.
All right, hold on 1 second. Before you explain that, Chris Simmons, I'm worried about your head exploding. You okay, man? You okay?
I'm still. I'll bet both of these guys that Trump will not get more than 20% of the overall Black vote. They are in the minority.
Okay.
So no,
I'm not saying he's gonna. I'm not gonna say
yeah.
I'm never gonna say he's gonna get the majority of the Black vote. I think.
No, I didn't say majority.
He said 20%.
Okay,
we'll see if
20%.
the exit poll's right. Hold on, Alexander. Hold on. Sorry, because at some point the internet will run out here. Shannon, tell us briefly about your journey from Bernie Sanders activist to Trump voter. How'd that happen?
Well, basically, I have some notes here. I'm like a little bit. I really have a lot of respect for both gentlemen. So basically, I I saw that vision of him when I was 18 years old. I saw, Trump was running as a populist and Bernie was running as a populist. I thought that Bernie was really the right answer. I convinced a lot of my family and friends, and I know a lot of the, New York politicians, worked on the Upper West Side. And I just see this cadre of, as Dr. Peterson had said, this cadre of people that he's bringing together, RFK Jr., Vivek, Vance, Tulsi Gabbard, who, how could you say, she, if you want to say, dropped out as vice chair of the Democratic National Committee. And, I saw everything that happened during that primary, and it just really left a bad taste in my mouth with the Democratic Party. I don't hate Kamala, but I just feel like Hillary Clinton really wanted to be president. I could at least respect her for that after everything with WikiLeaks, but I don't see that with Kamala Harris. I feel like she's incredibly unprepared, and I feel like they're almost gaslighting the African-American community to vote for her just because. So, I think with Trump in 24, I think it's very different than 16 and 20. I think he's really trying to, if you saw the RFK interview with Dr. Peterson, you really can see all of the nuances of how President Trump is trying to change I think he's trying to moderate a bit more, and I think he's having an all-expansive party because, I'm a young person, I'm LGBT, I'm, all these things. I should not be voting for Donald Trump, by all, demonstrable measure. But, I just see this as a real once in a lifetime opportunity to see someone that really wants to change America. And I believe it. Maybe I'm wrong.
Guys, I mean, we could, based on the reaction I'm getting, we could do this for another 2 hours, but I got to go and some other people have to go. Here's the good news. At 10 o'clock, we got to take a break. At 10:30, I'm back with another two-way. I don't know if Dan and Sean can come, but you three are welcome. We can pick right back up here, and we'd love for you guys to come. Shannon, have you been watching a lot of two-ways, or are you new here?
I've been, as you could tell in my shaky voice, I've been a nervous wreck. I've been wanting to come on the show for about 3 months, but I was too afraid to do it. So
yeah,
thank you for doing it.
Yeah,
Hey,
we'd
me
love
too,
having you
Shannon.
here. And you're a super fan of Chris Simmons, I assume, right?
Yes, I have a lot of respect for him and Mr. Starr. This is my first time seeing him, but I've been on the Upper West Side. I work as a caregiver now, and I just see everybody watching MSNBC all day, and it's like, I get Fox News also has their own thing going on, but it's just propaganda. But I digress.
Yeah, no, that's all right. We like people who come here for the right reasons. Shannon, take a minute and convince Chris he should vote for Donald Trump.
Oh gosh, well, I'll say this. My mom wants me to, I'm sure she'll want me to call you Mr. Halperin, but
don't do that. Don't do that.
Yes. But oh my gosh, I can't. I don't think I'm in the business of doing that. I'd rather defer to
Sean. That's right. I was mostly kidding, but I just trying to keep Chris light about this, because I would say this is Chris's worst nightmare. Maybe,
but I don't hate
maybe top 10. No, I know. I mean, what's made this such a nightmare for Chris, and here I am speaking for Chris, is you guys are both so extremely thoughtful about your support for Donald Trump, and it does not accord with probably what Chris likes to think about Trump supporters. Chris, I'm just going to keep speaking for you. No, these are yours.
Mark, can I say one thing?
Okay, yeah, please.
I want to echo what Shannon said and what I said at the top of my comments earlier, and I want Chris to hear this. Chris, you mean something to us as Black men.
Absolutely.
I've watched you. I've watched you engage here, and this is beyond this conversation. Like, we need more men like you in our communities.
Amen.
To speak and to carry the message that you're carrying. In terms of, like Mark just joked about, like switching you to another candidate or something. I would never. I don't try to switch anybody on their vote, because I genuinely believe, like I believe in freedom of speech. I believe that everyone's vote, however you choose to cast it, is your right. And it is for your reasons. And no one should be able to say anything to you about it. And you should stand on it. If you believe in something or someone or someone's identity, whatever it is, don't let anybody, even in this moment where you got two Black men of a younger generation on a little bit on the opposite side, because I say I'm more centrist, but just understand what you mean to us. Like, and I hope that's conveyed to you.
Yeah, Chris, do you want to respond briefly? I know you're
I
touched.
just want to say, I just want to say one final thing to my younger brothers here, and maybe it is generational, but here's a disqualifying moment for me forever for Trump. When asked about David Duke on one occasion, he wasn't sure, didn't know who David Duke was.
Mm-hmm.
That either said that he's a lying something or another about racial stuff, or he's stupid, because any white man of his age in politics in this country knows who the hell David Duke is. And so there's some fundamental stuff with Trump that we just can't get past.
Yeah, well, in the Central Park Five, I mean, Barack Obama, the leader of the birther movement. There's a million things, but everyone has loved this conversation. We're all grateful to the three of you and to Sherilyn, who spoke earlier, and the others who spoke. And Chris, I hope you feel the respect. I know you do, but we all do, and I think it's just such a great part of two-way that we're talking to people from all over the country, mostly the Upper West Side, but all over the country, and people with different points of view. And when Chris talks about David Duke, I know how strongly he feels about that. I keep speaking for you, but I know I'm right about that. and you guys coming on here, and I can announce today the formation of black men of the Upper West Side who are Bernie bros and Bloomberg alums. It's a disparate group, but we got to get a better name. It's like Bernie bros, Bloomberg.
We'll come up with something.
Whatever. But the fact that we got a former Bloomberg guy and a former Bernie guy here for Trump, and Chris can just be smiling and taking it all in. That's why we created. That's why we created this platform. Grateful to everybody. Come back at 10:30 if you want. Come back tomorrow. 10:30. I'll be on. In just half an hour after I go over and do some Merconish. You can listen to me there if you can't get enough of me. Then tonight, nothing. Then tomorrow, this program's on at 9 a.m. Then tomorrow night, Lauren Leader, a show on childcare at 5 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll send more around about that in the Substack and on social. But that's 5 o'clock tomorrow. You can see two great guests. So thank you, everybody. Again, Alexander and Shannon. Shannon, thank you for coming on. Chris, as always, and
I'll be back.
And we hope you all come back and keep us posted, and we'll have some ideas of other stuff we can do. But really grateful to you, and really pleased that so many hands were up. Sorry we didn't get to more people, but I think everybody agrees that sticking with these three gentlemen was a good experience for all of us. So guys, thank you. Have a great day. I'll see some of you in 29 minutes. I'm late for some Merconish, and then Sean and Dan and I will see you guys at 9 tomorrow. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. See you in 28 minutes.
Thank you.